everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Florimagoria, coming to you from the ugliest kitchen in America. I'm your kitchen. I mean, I am your kitchen today. I'm your host, Susie Bianco. Thank you for joining me. So it is now mid-October. We've got a couple things to cover in this episode. For the time of year that it is, there's a couple things. First of all, what we want to talk about, the most time-pressing issue in today's episode is garlic. It's time to plant your garlic. Now, obviously, you can do second planting later in the year if you want, but it takes a while for garlic to come up, to cook in your garden. It takes about 8 or 9 months, so it won't start showing greens until the weather starts coming up a little bit better, and it's pretty frost and cold resistant. It's a fairly hardy plant, so it's good to put it in now, let it go over the winter, and it'll start coming up in the spring and be done growing in about the late spring, early summer. And then you can go ahead and sow again after the frost, and you'll have a nice garlic bounty later in the fall too. It's a pretty good system. So what we're going to do, and it's very similar to our potatoes, only much less work actually. You can buy onion starts, I think is what they're called. I don't know. You can buy them at a home store. This was like half a bag. I tried to put them in the spring. My feral cats decided, ooh, let's play in the dirt, so they pulled a bunch of stuff out. And what I thought I was taking care of for 6 months was actually weeds and not garlic, which I found out the hard way about a month ago. So that was not enjoyable. But anyway, like our potatoes, what you can do is just, like I said, it's less work. And this is actually not looking so good. This one's a little bit rotten. Now, you don't have to buy onions or garlic sets at a store. You can literally just go to a grocery store, or a store like Lowe's, I should say, like a home store. You can literally go to a grocery store and buy a head of garlic for like $1. Same garlic that you cook with. Really, there's no difference there. The only difference is you want to leave it out about a week or two under some lights in a well-aerated place, just like our potatoes, and wait for it to start popping some green out. You don't have to do that. You can literally just pop them into the ground like this, and they will grow around a plant around it. It's fine. And like I said, this has been here for a while, and this has gone bad. Let's check on the other one. Yeah, that's not so good either. I left it in the house too long. That's fine. I didn't use all these up last spring. And as you can see, that was a mistake. So that was not so good. But this I bought from the store a couple of weeks ago. It's fine. Just pop them in the dirt, and it'll be good for, like I said, 8 or 9 months. You'll see some green start to pop up in a few months, and once that grows to about that high, maybe a foot, maybe not quite a foot, and it'll start to get yellow, especially down by the dirt, and start to die off a little bit, just like our potatoes. That's when you'll know it's time to pick. So it is mid-October as I'm filming this. It'll be slightly after mid-October by the time this goes up this Sunday. So, yep, it's time to put in your garlic, if you want to grow garlic. If you're a vampire, I wouldn't suggest it, unless you just don't want company, because sometimes that sucks. Anyway, okay. So, let's get this out of the way. That was not a good idea. Alright, so the main thrust of what I want to talk about today is saving seeds. Now, I like to do this at the end of the year, just so, The plant has had as long as the plant is still healthy. If this is something that is going to be dying off fairly early, like carrots, well, obviously you can't really save carrot seeds. That's a whole in-depth process that we're not going to go into right now. Maybe another time we'll talk about propagating root vegetables like carrots. I mean, we've talked about potatoes, but yeah, there's a whole other area of root vegetables in there that we'll talk about at a different time next year, probably. But today we want to talk about saving seeds from stuff like vegetables, fruits, peppers, tomatoes, the big stuff that you grow in your garden that you might want to have heirloom varieties of, especially tomatoes. Tomatoes are the biggie. So, before we get started, we have to talk about classifications of pollination in the garden. Juicy stuff, I know. So, we're going to get out my handy dandy little chart that I made like an hour ago that is very confusing and makes no sense whatsoever. So, we're going to talk about self-pollinators today. Now, a self-pollinating plant is one that has both male and female flowers growing on each plant that can send pollen back and forth between them, basically. A non-self-pollinating plant may have male flowers or female flowers, and it requires, can't talk today, it requires an outside source, insects, bugs, butterflies, bees, houseflies, anything like that, to carry the pollen from one flower to the other. So, as you can see on our chart, non-self-pollinators, squash, and there's an asterisk, and we'll get to that in a minute. Melons, berries, apples, and certain strains of certain types of stone fruit, like plums and apricots, things like that. Those are things that, stone fruits are very different because they have the pit in them. They're actually a tree. It's a whole. That's another episode. We'll talk about that later. But like stuff like berries, apples, melons. I don't know how to propagate melons. That's a tough one. But self-pollinators are the ones that are going to be really, really easy to just take the seeds out and save them. We'll go through the process here in a minute. Super simple, no extra steps involved, no worry about it. Of course, tomatoes, big self-pollinator, super easy to create heirloom strains of tomatoes. Beans, like pole beans, bush beans, like blue lake beans. I've done that a few times. What you want to do with beans is, well, we'll come back to that. Peas and peppers. As you can see, my little jalapeno. Now, our squash. Squash is a little bit unusual. It is not a self-pollinator. It requires outside help for pollination. But if you have any kind of basic pollination in your garden, your plants are probably getting pollinated. It's probably okay to save the seeds in your squash plants and throw them all over your kitchen table like I just did. Just because of the shape, the size of the flower, it's really unlikely, unless you have 0 pollinators present in your garden, which is very unlikely itself, that as long as you have more than one, and I've got like 3 zucchini, I've got like 3 pumpkins that came up, they're getting pollinated. I have a lot of bugs outside. I've had bees flying around. They're definitely going to be pollinated. They're definitely going to be healthy. So technically, they are not a self-pollinator, but unless you have strange circumstances where you have no bugs in your garden, they're going to be getting pollinated. It's okay to do it. So, all right. That chart can go away. So, what you want to do, what I like to do, quite frankly, let's put it that way. Okay, what I like to do is wait until the end of the year. Like I said before, I like to wait until the plant is fairly mature and is putting out mature fruit that will be able to stay on the plant for longer than you normally would expect it. So that's why I like doing it at this time of year, because I've seen the plant's output. Over the summer, I can tell, it's a healthy plant or it's not a healthy plant. And so I know what to expect by the end of the year. And sometimes, your plants will start to go a little bit earlier. It's just definitely something to research when you put in about what the lifespan would be. And it's definitely, you want to keep in mind the zone, the planting zone where you're at. So you know about when those plants are going to start to die down and die off. So you can kind of hit it at right at a good time where you're not, trying to get fruit off of a dying plant. Right about, like if this is the apex, you want to go right about here. You don't want to be down here trying to get an overripe zucchini or tomato or something off of your plant. So that'll produce the best subjects, basically. If any of you are fans of, ninth grade biology, when you did those, what was it, Gregor Mendel's beans and pea plants, the little graphs. It's interesting to keep that in mind, if you're hand pollinating an unself-pollinating plant, which is a weird sentence, that's definitely something to keep in mind. Anyway, oh, and I should mention, I burned myself making pies yesterday. Yesterday was a bad day. This is not anything to be concerned about. It just looks terrible. I don't even know if you can see it on film, but I figured I'd say something. Okay, so we are going to start with jalapenos. As you can see, these have been a little bit left on the vine, a little bit longer than you would want to eat them. This, it's old and it's cracking, but the seeds inside are going to have the best chance of being fairly mature, which is what we want. We want them to be have a nice full life cycle after this. We don't want baby seeds, which is why it is difficult if you're in a grocery store and you want to plant stuff from that you find in the grocery store, because unless you're buying locally and the fruit and the vegetables are shipped in locally, what normally happens is they'll especially which is the reason why tomatoes taste terrible when you buy them from the grocery store. It's because they get picked when they're still green, before they're ripe, and they ripen up in transport to the store. And you don't want to use those seeds because they are not mature seeds, and you're going to have a heck of a time trying to get stuff to grow from them. So that's just something to keep in mind, which is, it's nice when you can control, when you can grow stuff and make your own heirloom varieties, because you can control when you're picking the stuff, because you would never find this in a store. Look at it. It's ugly. You can't really use the meat of the jalapeno very much because it's all dried and cracked on the outside. But this is really good for our purposes, because we know it's a mature plant. The seeds are going to be able to grow and mature and produce another plant after that. So we're going to start with peppers, because peppers are just the easiest things. They are the easiest seeds because they're already dry, and they don't, like tomatoes, there's a lot of goop in there. Pumpkins, a lot of goop. Peppers, not a lot of goop. So what you can do is cut off the top. And let me grab and just, as any of you have been able to tell from cutting peppers, if you do it too violently, the seeds will just kind of go everywhere. And that's actually a good thing. We are happy with that, because it doesn't require any extra steps of trying to clean them out. Trying to degoopify them, which is something that we'll get to with our tomatoes. So just carefully slice open, and you can see it's turning red on the inside. It's a little bit past its prime, the fruit itself, which is perfect for what we want for our seeds. And you just pull the seeds out. Now what I like to do is use just a thin strainer like this. As you can see, the hole. Hopefully, you can see the holes are so small, the seeds aren't going to go through them. And currently, I have pumpkin seeds in here, which I'm going to get to in a minute. This is the final stage of where we want. So, as you can see, these pop off pretty easily. Just takes a little bit of force, and they come off. You might have a little bit of the pith, the white part that the seeds are attached to, coming off too. But you can pick that out pretty easily. And these are pretty nice and dry, as it is. They don't require a lot of TLC from this point, but with all seeds, what I like to do is just give them all a quick rinse off. Oh, one thing I should have mentioned when I was talking about Gregor Mendel. You know, obviously, if you say you buy a plant, like me, you know, or you buy seeds, much like I could show you these stupid things. These are supposed to be red bell peppers. I got bushels and bushels of green bell peppers, which I hate. Okay, so obviously I don't want to keep those. Because I like red bell peppers. I hate green bell peppers because there's a very big, you know, I mentioned this on the show before. I hate green bell peppers because they're bitter and they make everything miserable in the dish that you're making. So obviously I'm not going to keep those. But if you find a type of plant that fruits that has really good, you know, something you like about it, a good trait that you want to preserve, like these jalapenos. They're pretty tasty. They aren't really spicy. They don't have an extra lot of spice, which I wasn't crazy about because I like spice, but other people in my life are not really fans of it. So it makes it easier to make food for them. So yeah, I'm gonna keep a lightly flavored, lightly spiced jalapeno plant around. You know, why not? That's fine. Okay, so just like Gregor Mendel, we're going to focus on the traits that we want to keep and moving ahead with our heirlooms. And that's it. That's it for clearing out jalapenos and peppers, just peppers in general, capsicum, whatever you call them. Now, you know, give them a rinse and then leave them just like this. Space them out. Make sure there's only, you know, one layer. Leave them on a flat surface, somewhere protected, for a couple of days. Let them dry out. And then what we want to do is take our old friends, the single-use plastic bags, which I always say don't use them, and then I always use them on the show. But in this case, they actually work really well because all you have to do is when these are have been rinsed, left out, nice and dry, no moisture on them because that will cause no end of problems. Just take a Sharpie, write on them what they are, and then what I like to do is take a piece of, like a half a piece of paper towel and just slide it in there. Dump in the seeds and make sure that you burp the bag and then seal it, and you're good to go. You know, the paper towel is just an extra little bit of protection to make sure that, you know, any moisture that creeps in there is going to be wicked away from the seeds. And any moisture that might come while it's in storage is also going to be kept away so they remain dry. Because I had actually, earlier this summer, I had found some seeds that I had put away that were not entirely dry, and it was a bag full of mold. Just, that's a lot of hard work, but it needs to be tossed out because that you don't want to, I mean, even if they do grow, you don't want to eat stuff that comes off that plant. Just toss it. And that is always a shame because not only is that a lot of hard work during your growing season, but it's hard work after preparing the seeds, and, you know, nobody wants to see this. So it's better to just leave it out for a couple of days. Just overly make sure that they're dry so that you don't have to deal with that, you know, in the future, because it's just a mess. Some of us are very allergic to mold and mildew. Oh, I wasn't dealing with that. It was just like, whoop, nope, in the trash. Okay. So now, as you can see, we'll get back to that. All right, we're going to talk about tomato goop. Now, this is something that I actually just learned recently because my my tomato seed harvests in the past were questionable, but it worked. So in the past, when I've had heirloom tomatoes, this is what I've done, because it's really hard to get the goop off of them. And bearing in mind what I just said about mold, it's a little bit of a tricky situation. So what I would do in the past is literally just spread them on a paper towel, goop and all, and let it dry. Again, you have to make sure that you let it dry. And then, it's hard to get off, so I would just like cut apart the paper towel around the seeds or tear it apart. But it, honestly, it's weird, but it kind of works because it almost has its own starter medium, because there's just like a little bit of extra fertilizer in there to give it a boost when it finally breaks down in the soil. But, this is kind of gross. You don't want to deal with that. Unless you do, I probably will keep dealing with this because it kind of sometimes works. I haven't been having any problems with it. You just have to make extra sure with this stuff that it dries, because that's just a mess waiting to happen. Okay. But I have recently just discovered something interesting. I did this last night with a couple of Roma tomatoes. I hope you can see it. Basically, you take a little, what do you call this? This is wonton soup container from a local Chinese place. I definitely keep too many of these but they're like super, super useful. So just a container with a lid that seals. This one doesn't. It keeps dripping on me, but you get the idea. And just shake it up. And for a couple of days, do this a few times a day for a couple of days. And I don't know if you can see it as it's flying by, but as I did this yesterday, and I shook it up a little bit yesterday, the seeds are already starting to separate. So all you have to do is wait for the seeds to separate, and I'll show some video from the bottom underneath. You can see a lot of seeds on the bottom. The goop will go to the top, the seeds will go to the bottom, and then all I have to do is, when they're all separated, just take something like, if I can find it. There it is. Like our handy dandy fryer thingy, and just kind of scoop the guts out. And you'll be left with seeds on the bottom, and they're already pretty clean. So all you have to do is lay them out on a paper towel, dry them, and store them. And as you can see, this is sort of the final stage of the drying. I was degoopifying, again, the burn. I was making pumpkin pie, and things went wrong. The crust got screwed up, and I got burned. So I decided, oh, well, screw that. I'm just going to make a crustless pumpkin pie. We're going to talk about this next year on our very fabulous Halloween episode next year, which hopefully Kiki won't be involved in. I don't know. She comes and goes where she wants. So, yeah. Now with these, as you can see, these have been left on the vine a good long time, and I don't have to worry about the lack of soft pollinization. That's a hard word. In my garden. I don't know. Hopefully you can see it's already. These are really nice. Nice, thick, healthy looking. Some of them are still sticking together, but that's okay. So this is going to be your final stage after the degoopening. I could make that another little horror movie. I should have thought about that. Basically, I'm going to take about half of these and save them for next year, and I'm going to take the other half and maybe a little bit more than half and roast them up for a snack. That's going to be really good. And we're going to talk about that in our first November episode of Kitchen Witchin', so stay tuned for that. That's going to be fun. But yeah, this is basically what you're going to end up with after the degoopening. Just give them a rinse. Actually, these could use another rinse. They're still a little sticky. And lay them out on a paper towel. And a nice flat surface. Let them dry off, and then you can put them away in our little storage thing. And like drying herbs, I love just using stuff from around the house. You don't have to pay a bunch of money for a bunch of stuff. It's fine, really. You know, you can always find stuff around the house, find stuff for cheap, make stuff yourself, that you don't need to spend a lot of money on. You know, most of the stuff can be done with common household items. So, I don't know if I really need to, well, yeah, I'll cut it up for you. I'll let you see the process. So we have, this is actually a little patio tomato that I have growing in my garden. This is the only thing they had at the farm market after the cats pulled all of the big heirloom tomatoes out of my garden. So they went in a little bit late, and they wouldn't turn green for a while. It was like early September before they all started turning green. It was a weird situation, but we're gonna do this here. Just, you know, cut your tomato in half. There you go. Now these are Roma tomatoes, and we talked about Roma tomatoes on the show when we made our, I always want to call it baba ganoush. It's not baba ganoush. Our ratatouille, about how they are paste tomatoes, and you can cook them down for sauce really easy. There's not a lot of water in them. So they were pretty easy to take out, because all you had to do was just pop them right out. There wasn't a lot of liquid involved. See, you can see there's a lot of liquid in these. So it's a little bit of a different process. Those were easier. These are a little bit more difficult. But basically, there are little channels in here. Your tomatoes. Just want to open up, pull them out. I should have gotten a bigger tomato for this, but this is fine. Now these I probably won't save. I'm just using this because these were, you know, I grabbed these out of the garden, and they were not on, I mean, they're fine, but I like tomatoes, like beefsteak tomatoes. I like, you know, and these have really, really tiny, questionably healthy seeds. These whole plants have been kind of questionably healthy since I put them in. But they're good for cooking down. They were good. I made sauce with them. They were very, very good. They have a nice bright flavor, nice light flavor. So, and then there's these little, just four or five little channels behind the main. We're going to be talking about structural integrity of tomatoes here. These main fleshy parts here, sort of in between and behind there. There you go. And that's all it takes. Do that with a couple of tomatoes. Fill it up with water about halfway. Put a lid on and just start shaking. Or you can just, you know, leave them on a paper towel as they are and have it look horrible and have people think that you're growing trash. Those people don't know what they're talking about. Okay. So it's not too hard a process. It's just, you know, a few things to keep in mind before you do it. And we'll talk about propagating other plants in different episodes down the line. Obviously, you know, things like root vegetables are a lot more difficult. I don't even know, you know, we talked briefly on our planting episode about asparagus, about how you literally have to, like, separate the roots in order to grow it. There's a lot on this topic, because there's a lot of really interesting plants out there that all have their own sort of ways of reproducing. So it's definitely something we'll talk more about in the future. But I think that's about all we need to cover today. Make sure you get your garlic in for the spring. It is time. So that's about all for this episode of Florimegoria. Thank you so much for joining me from the ugliest kitchen in America again. And happy planting. We'll see you in November. Bye.